Hello there, this is John V, Software Evangelist at Jscape, and today I'm going to show you how to install a Jscape MFT Synchronizer agent on a Linux host. Agents are used in cases wherein the remote host that you would like to synchronize with Jscape MFT Synchronizer doesn't have any supported file transfer service whatsoever, so there's no FTP, no FTPS, no SFTP, nada. Agents have much smaller computing resource footprints and lower maintenance requirements than a full-blown file transfer solution. So it's really more practical to use if all you really need to do is push or pull a bunch of files to or from that remote host. Now, before you can use any instance of MFT Synchronizer Agent, you need to make sure that 1. You already have an agent object on your MFT Synchronizer that would later on correspond to the agent you'll be installing on the remote host. And 2, you already have the agent service enabled. So let me demonstrate how to set those up first. So the first thing we're going to do is log into our MFT Synchronizer manager, and then we go to agents, and so the first thing we want to do is add an agent. Add an agent here. So we need to enter login credentials for this particular agent. So we need to add a username. Let's just call this Linux agent. And let's give it a password. Of course, your password should be stronger than that. And then let's just repeat that password to confirm. And then make sure that's enabled. Now remember, these values should match the values that you will later on enter into your agent username and agent password parameters when you install your agent on the remote host. Once you've taken note of that, you can now click Add. And there our agent has been created. Click OK. So we have our new agent there. And the next step would be to add the service. So we go to the Service tab, and then just edit this. And so with the Agent Service Configuration dialog appears, we can now specify the agent service parameters. The first parameter is the host or IP address. So this is the IP address that the agent service will be listening on. Again, the special IP address of 0.0.0.0 may be used if you want to listen on all available IP addresses. And so for the port, this is also the port that the agent service will be listening on. The default value, as you can see, is 425. And finally, the key. So this is a server key that will be used for encrypting communications between the remote agent and the agent service. Now, we're just using the default key here. But in a production environment, that is not advisable. You need to change that key, and you need to do that here in the keys module. But for now, let's just use the default key and then click on Save. There, our agent service configuration has been updated. Okay, so our service is listening on incoming agent connections. But right now we don't have an agent yet, so let's add one on our Linux machine. So we're now here on our Linux machine. But before we go about installing our agent, we need to do something first. We need to create a folder, if it doesn't exist yet, where MFT Synchronizer will be pulling files from or pushing files to. This folder is important because once we start installing our MFT Synchronizer agent, one of the required parameters is this folder. So let me see first where we are. And maybe we can create our folder here. So let's just say and maybe we can call this folder files to sync. Alright. And so there, we now have our folder. Okay, now that we have that, let's go to the folder where we want to install our MFT Synchronizer agent. I want to install our agent in the OPT directory, so I'll go to Alright, and we'll download our agent installer. Now if you go to the download page of MFT Synchronizer, you'll notice that there are two types of MFT Synchronizer Agent installer for Linux. There's the RPM version and there's the zip version. So for now I'm going to use the zip installer. So I'll just copy that link here. And let's download that using that link. So we'll just use sudo wget and just paste that link and then download the install. So we now have our installer here, and let's just unzip the installer to install. Just copy this, and that should create a new subdirectory. And if we navigate into that directory, you'll see the files of our MFT Synchronizer Agent. So let's clear that up first. And then to configure that, let's just type in /agent configuration -host, and then the IP address of our MFT Synchronizer service. Remember that when we set up our MFT Synchronizer service, we use 0.0.0.0, but we can't use that here. We need to be pointing to an actual reachable IP address instead of 0.0.0. So the IP, let's look at the IP address of our MFT Synchronizer server. So that's 172.31.42.215, and the port number, we know the port number since we just followed the default port number, so that's 425. And then our user, we entered Linux agent. I hope I got that correctly. And then our password was, I think, password. Alright. And then we need to point this to the directory we created earlier. So that's called the root path, and if I'm not mistaken, it was /home/c2.user/files to sync. Oh, this is called, oh, so this parameter is supposed to be dash root path, and then the path of that directory we created earlier. And then finally, we should, the last parameter is dash native process, and let's just enter disallowed for now. So this is an option indicating whether to allow or disallow Jscape MFT Synchronizer Agent to run native commands on this host as part of synchronization process. We don't need that for now, and so that's why we selected disallow. Let's click enter. Let's see. Alright, it says done, so I think we got that right. And since we've already configured our MFT Synchronizer Agent, we now have to start it up. Start agent. Start agent.sh. Okay, so that's the right way to do it. So now that our agent is started, we need to verify that it's actually connecting to our MFT Synchronizer. So let's now go back to our MFT Synchronizer. So there it is. And so if you rewind the video, you'll notice that this space here was blank. There were no agents yet. So now it has detected the agent, and the IP address of the agent is this one. We can check that out here. If we go ifconfig, and there, as you can see, this is the IP address. This IP address matches the IP address of the host where our agent was installed. So that's it. Now you know how to install Jscape MFT Synchronizer Agent